Hello, once again, everyone. I'm your host, Ray Shasho, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Rockstar Chronicles, Series 1. It's my new book featuring over 45 intimate conversations with the greatest music legends the world will ever know. Available now at bookbaby.com and amazon.com. Well, in the ever-changing world of pop and rock, it's an achievement to write, perform even one song that stays in the public consciousness. To do it again and again, and for those songs to keep on reviewing themselves decade after decade, while you continue to create new ones and perform all over the world, is rare indeed. But then singer-songwriter, master of the keyboards and recording artist Rod Argent, he's a rare talent. Three of the classic songs that Rod wrote and helped to make hits as a member of the Zombies in the 60s now have total airplay in America alone of over 14 million. U.S. performing rights body BMI says that Time of the Season stands at over 7 million. She's Not There at over 4.5 million, and Tell Her No is over 3 million. If you spun them 14 million times back to back, that would represent about 80 years worth of continuous music. Those and other gems in Argent's songbook have accrued millions more plays around the world, and his work is always in incredible demand for use in commercials and films everywhere. But as much as he still loves to play in those other landmark compositions, as he and Colin Blunstone toured to global acclaim with the revitalized Zombies, Rod Argent is no history man. For some 7 years, his focus was on a new band that seized the spirit of rock experimentation and became one of the most significant British groups of the first half of the 70s, Argent. Argent made their first demos in 1968, and the following year, with the band leader joined by Rodford, Bob Henrid, and a formidable new writing partner, frontman and foil for Rod's nimble keyboards, Russ Ballard. They made their album debut with a self-titled release in 1970, and early recognition came in the form of a cover when Three Dog Night took Liar from the first album into the American Top 10. But by 1972, Argent were ready for full out on singles chart stardom of their own. The brilliant Hold Your Head Up from their third album altogether now became a top 5 hit on both sides of the Atlantic. The following year's equally anthemic God Save Rock and Roll to You made the UK top 20 as the band built a catalog of 7 studio albums before disbanding in 1975. The Zombies' second coming has seen them performing with all the energy of the numerous stars of later generations who have named them as influences from young bands like the Vaccines, such as Paul Weller, David Grohl, and Tom Petty, who says simply the Zombies were and are cool. Rod Argent's back catalog is one of the most distinguished on record or on stage for that matter. The most exciting thing of all is that he's still adding to it. The Zombies' 2019 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction marked a major triumph in their 5-decade career, but you can be sure that will not rest on their laurels. The Zombies story continues on. Please welcome keyboardist, singer, songwriter, composer, record producer, co-founder, and member of Argent and the Zombies, in a career spanning over 50 years, Rod Argent, Interviewing the Legends. We're done.
Oh, that's it, is it? Well, nice to talk to you.
Nice talking to you too, Rod. Well, when you had such an illustrious career, it's hard to get it all in, man.
Oh, thank you.
The first comment I want to say, I met the whole band backstage in Largo, Florida several years ago. It might have even been 2013. I was covering the show and I was a guest. I also had interviewed Colin, who was featured in my first book, my series 1, the Rockstar Chronicles. Okay. I'd like to feature you in series 2, by the way. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of concerts over the years, but only twice did I jump out of my seat screaming ecstatically. First time was when Jeff Beck performed Going Down at Constitution Hall in DC And then when you did the keyboard solo on Hold Your Head Up in Largo, Florida, oh my God, man, I was blown away.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I mean, the thing is, I still love playing that. And it always amuses me, the fact that when the record came out, it had a 3-minute organ solo on it. And it wasn't really being a hit, first of all. And then the record company made it down to 3.5 minutes by taking out the organ solo. But I still love the long version, and we always do that on stage. We always do a long version, and it gives me a chance to spread my wings a bit and continue improvising and take things into new places. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that makes it such a joy to continue to play with the Zombies, because we're always listening intently to each other and taking things into new places. And because there's a lot of improvisation in the set, it means we can do that. So it keeps it all fresh, for us as well. And actually, in the last few years, it's just been wonderful for me, because Rick Wakeman, I was actually, Christmas before last, I was at a relative's house, and they had the radio on, and Rick Wakeman was on a radio program, and they asked him what was the what was his favorite record, and he asked him to play the long version of Hold Your Head Up, and it completely blew me away, because he's a fine player, and he said, this is the greatest organ solo ever recorded on a record. I couldn't believe it. It was so nice that at this stage in our careers, for all that sort of thing to go on, and the fact that we, continuing to record, etc., and get excited about that, that's absolutely brilliant.
Well, Rod, you look wonderful, man. What are you, 45 now?
Thing like, I get confused with numbers now, because
so do I.
I'm actually 76.
It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. But guys like, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, but I say this, but and Colin says the same thing. Mm-hmm. When we're on stage, the great thing is, because we often play to an audience which obviously has people of our age in it, but also people of all ages.
Right.
And we almost always play to a young component in the audience as well. And we have young bands coming backstage to us. You were kind enough to mention some of the young bands in your prequel just now, mm-hmm. when you introduced me. And when you have a quite a large young component in the audience, you get such a huge amount of energy back. And it's not just for the old things, it's for the new songs that we're just putting into the set as well. And do you know what? It's the most rejuvenating thing. I don't think there's another profession in the world where mm-hmm. you can actually go on stage and feel just like you did when you were 18 for those couple of hours. I mean, afterwards, there tends to be more of a rush for the hotel and, hot chocolate and slippers. But while you're on stage, it's just fantastic to be able to recapture that energy. It's great.
Well, a big date is September 18th at 3:00 Eastern time. That's when you're going to have a worldwide streaming event from Abbey Road Studios. You got to be excited about that.
Well, I am. We've often played in Abbey Road.
Right.
We did when we got frustrated with some of the later Zombie singles before we broke up. Before Time of the Season, I have to add. If Chris and I thought we may be breaking up, and as the writers in the band, we desperately wanted to produce an album ourselves. And we wanted it to be, come what may, we wanted it to be as we heard our own songs.
Right.
And we went to Abbey Road for that. And we had the most wonderful experience there. It was fantastic. We walked in there, just people were walking out, having finished Sergeant Pepper. We had the same engineers as them. We had Jeff Emmerich, who did Time of the Season, and was hugely talented. And it was just wonderful working with these guys. And it was, that was a seminal moment for us. So, and then after that, Hold Your Head Up for Argent, that you kindly mentioned, and God Gave Rock and Roll to You. They were.
Rod, you faded out a little bit. I can't hear you too good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I have my hand over the
Oh.
mic. I never know where the mic is on this iPad.
We apologize for that.
Yeah, I apologize. Sorry. But worked over the years many times. But some of the seminal things and some of the most exciting things for us have been at Abbey Road.
Mhm.
So it's really fantastic to end this lockdown period. It's pretty scary in a way as
It
well,
is.
because we haven't played together for 2 years. The
Mhm.
last gig we did was 2 years ago in Madrid, I think it was the October or November, something like that, where we played to a fantastic club.
Mhm.
And there again, I was knocked out because the whole audience seemed to be students. I don't know why, but they were singing along with everything, including our new songs as well.
Awesome.
It was just so lovely. But we haven't played since then. So because of lockdown, our bass player now, because Jim Rodford passed away.
Yeah.
3 years in 2019, was it? But it, no, it was before that. But that was so sad. My cousin Jim. But we have a wonderful bass player now from Denmark. But it means he hasn't been able to come over and work with us on the new album. Although we've done things remotely as far as we could, but we're now again working on the new album, and we're going to be doing at Abbey Road, apart from the things that people would imagine we'll be doing, like Time of the Season, like She's Not There, like Tell Her No, like even Hold Your Head Up we'll be doing there. And some deeper cuts of early Zombies things.
Awesome.
We'll be doing all that, but we'll also be doing something like including 2 songs from the last album, which actually charted in Billboard.
Right.
On Still Got That Hunger. We're actually doing 7 new songs along in a maybe a 1.5 hour set or 1 3/4 hour sets, along with all the things that people will know from of old. So we have to tune ourselves up for that, because we just haven't played together. But we've had a couple of rehearsals now already, and it was so brilliant to get back with the guys and to be playing again, So that in itself is very exciting. And I'm really, really looking forward to revisiting Abbey Road. It should be lovely.
Well, Abbey Road, it's their 90th anniversary. Wow, I can't believe that.
I know.
90 years.
It was opened in 19. Was it 19? Does this work out? 1930. Yeah, 1930. I think around then, with Edward Elgar. It was the first the English classical composer. And I found out something really weird. A week ago, we got a new electrician in I've got this very old barn conversion here. I don't know if you can, see it. But anyway, he was doing some electrical work for us. And he said, you're a musician, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, I said, yeah. And I mentioned Abbey Road. And he said, my grandfather's got a plaque up in the entrance of Abbey Road Studios. Wow. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, because he invented stereo in 1937. Someone called Bloomline.
Wow.
And so I'm going to take a photo of that when
That's
I go
incredible.
back there, I've never looked at it before.
What a small world too, when you run into, his history like that. That's incredible. England is such an amazing place for rock and roll. I talked to Jim McCartney once, and he was telling me how close all the guitar players in the band were from each other. Clapton, Beck, and Jimmy Page. They all lived kind of close to each other in England, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, at that time, the Zombies were out on a limb in those days because we lived anyway close to London. We were just 18 miles north. We would never. I mean, everyone from the Beatles and onwards. A lot of the musicians that came from distant places and moved down to London because it was the centre of the music industry, and they would hang out at clubs, which we occasionally went to at night, like the Bag of Nails and the Cromwellian, and jam there and play concerts. And we sort of missed out on that. We went to some wonderful parties at the Moody Blues House in London, where the Who used to go, and I think the Beatles sometimes went there. Although we never found ourselves there at the same time as the Beatles. But it was a very often London became almost like a village for musicians, actually, because they, they all hung out there. And the thing is, in those days, we were playing at least one gig every night, and it was hard to mix with the other guys because everyone was in different places,
right?
Unless you did it a little bit socially. And we tended to, even if we went to a club in London, we tend to go back to St Albans afterwards because it was so close.
Yep.
So it was a little different for us, but in fact, we see more of sort of wonderful vintage musicians now than I ever did. Back then, I got to know Gary Brooker. Just 2 years ago, when we did a cruise, and he was playing on the cruise as well. And I had a couple of lovely chats with him. And I actually asked him on the boat on his set. I said, "Look, would you do a request for me? Will you play Salty Dog?" Because he said, "Oh, do you think that's the sort of thing they want to hear?" I said, "Absolutely." He was playing outdoors, and it was beautiful weather in just off the coast of Florida.
Right.
And he played Salty Dog into this wonderful warm night sky, and it was completely magical. And it was so great to have a few minutes to hook up with him and to talk, and ask him about some of the things that I particularly like on the live album that he did with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra when he did Conquistador, and he told me about writing the string arrangements, etc., on those. So so these days I did a tour with Ringo Starr in 2006.
Yeah, that's right.
And at the press preview, one of the questions to Ringo was, it must have been great to meet up with Rod again, because we both had hits in 1964,
right?
In the States. And he said, "I've never met him before," and they couldn't believe that. But there we were, working on the same things, and it was great.
Yeah, it's crazy. I want to mention the concert, the live streaming, which again is on October 3rd. No, October 3rd is the rewatch. You can rewatch it if you missed it the first time. But September 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I want to mention that the concert will be followed by an online Q&A session from Abbey Road with Rod Argent and Colin Blunstone. And you can get your tickets. The tickets are only like $20. And if you miss it, the day of the show, it's a little higher. It's about $35. So get your tickets early for that. It's going to be a great event. I'm looking forward to it.
Can I also tell you just a quick thing, that in the concert, we'll be doing two of the new songs that we'll be doing.
Okay.
We'll be playing with the full band, obviously,
right?
But also with the string quintet.
Oh, really?
That's coming. That we've got from ELO. It's the people that play with ELO.
Really?
And they're just wonderful musicians and great classical players, but also they can play. They're just as conversant with everything to do with rock and roll as well. And the rehearsals we've had with them are just brilliant. So in fact, I'm on Sunday this week, we're actually recording them onto two of our new songs that I've just composed.
Oh, fantastic.
So so that should be really nice to see too.
Very important to get the tickets. You can go to www.thezombiesmusic.com/live, which takes you into www.veeps.com. So that's the easy way to get all the tickets. And I recommend everybody getting tickets now. I'd be a little nervous for this gig.
Yeah, but excited too.
It's exciting. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I'm really, really looking forward to it. But I mean, the thing is, I've been doing this so many years now.
Yeah,
I never get nervous going on stage. But there's going to definitely be a frisson on doing this one at Abbey Road. I have to tell you.
Well, I'm looking forward to a long solo by Rod Argent.
Well, that's just as well. Because on Hold Your Head Up, it will be fairly long.
You've got a lengthy tour coming up, God willing, everything goes okay with COVID and everything. On February 10th, I think it kicks off in 2022, and you're kicking it off in the UK, right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
got
we've got,
dates. Go ahead.
no, you probably know, you've probably got the gigs there in front of you
Mhm.
more than me. No, we do start off with a short tour in the
Right.
UK, and that's quite unusual for us these days. And it's not intentional. It's just that we have been touring 3 times a year in the States and Canada,
Mhm.
and in Europe as well. And so somehow we've missed out the UK a bit. So this will be the first time back there for a while. But then as you can say, you've got all the information in front of you.
Right.
But we do go. We do then, I believe, Ray, starting a tour that we had to postpone at the very last minute because of COVID. And
Right.
that's one of the cruises, isn't it?
Yep.
We're doing cruise nets, yeah. But you can tell me what we're doing.
Well, the tour so far ends in Germany on September 16th, but I'm assuming you're going to add some more dates and hopefully back to Florida because you guys are very popular here.
Do you know, Florida now, it was a complete mystery to me because, in fact, in the early days, I don't really mean the first Zombies tour. I don't remember,
Mhm.
and my memory's a bit hazy about exactly where we played. I know that we did play Jacksonville very early on because Tom Petty said it was the first concert he ever went to.
That's funny.
And he remembers everything about it. He was, we became friends with him, particularly in the last year of his life. And it was absolutely wonderful to actually get to know him a little bit. And I'm so proud and pleased that we could do that. But he was telling me about all the things that happened on that concert in Jacksonville. I couldn't believe it. So I know we played Jacksonville then, but after that, and with Argent, we did tour in the South, but it was never, I don't know, it was never a particularly strong audience-wise drawing crowds for us. But then suddenly, I always remember we hooked up with a marvelous agency called TCI, and 2 of the people in TCI became our managers, and they started doing a wonderful job and just really getting everything really right for us. And I remember we started a tour. This was really quite a few years ago now, and then someone said, "Oh yeah, then you've got 2 or 3 gigs in the South." And I said to Colin, "Oh, I love the South, but as you know what, I'm not particularly looking forward to it because we never draw very many people there." Yeah. I mean, I remember the first time in this reincarnation that we played Georgia, there were about 12 people in the audience. But anyway, I couldn't believe it because suddenly we ended up in this venue, and it wasn't huge, but it held about 400 or 500 people, and it was packed. It was actually rammed. And now every time we play in the South, we get absolutely great audiences. And I really, really look forward to going down to Florida and down to the South in general. It's a real highlight now.
Yeah. Well, we love you down here now. Definitely. I'm originally from the DC area, so most of the shows I've seen was in the Washington DC area, which of course you guys were huge in DC, DC, New York, Baltimore, that whole Philadelphia, that whole circuit. Time of the season. This was very interesting because it was released, I think, somewhere around 68, but it got big later in 69. And I remember when that song came out, I told everybody, I told them, I says, you know what? I know you guys like the Beatles, but my favorite bands are the Zombies and the Turtles. And I meant that. I liked you guys better than the Beatles, man. And especially when that song came out.
Bless you. Well, it almost got away. I mean,
yeah.
The only reason it came out is we completed our album,
right,
Odyssey and Oracle, and we were very pleased and proud because we thought it was the best we could do. And then we put a single out in the UK, which was Carousel 44, and it wasn't a hit, so we broke up. And then just about a year later, we got a phone call from our then US publisher, Al Gallico. Excuse me. Sorry, coffee repeating on me. And he said, "Do you know what?" He said, I think we've got a hit. And I said, "Well, what?" I didn't even know it had been released in the States at that point. And he said, "Well, it started very slowly, but it suddenly really gathered legs." And there was a guy in Boise, in Idaho, who started playing it. And in the way that things could do all those years ago, I mean, often the charts are very quick now. They're very instant, but in those days, something could happen very slowly and gradually gather momentum.
Right.
Almost like, it seems to me like someone throws a stone into a pond and the ripples start to work outwards.
Right.
And he got a great reaction from playing this fairly frequently on his show. And it grew and grew and grew. And then that spread to wider areas. Suddenly, it started shooting up the US charts. And it actually made number one in Cashbox. And I think it was 2 or 3, I can't remember, in Billboard. But the extraordinary thing was the day of our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction was 50 years to the day
really
that Cashbox published their edition, which showed Time of the Season at number one.
How about that, huh? What a coincidence.
And that was, unbelievable coincidence, yeah. So, and that was wonderful because at that time, Chris White and I had maintained a partnership, although Chris didn't want to play anymore at that time. So we went over to the States and we were having meetings with Clive Davis in CBS. And because we had the number one record, it made doing a deal really easy for Argent, and for our other production thing. So, people often ask me, was it really frustrating that you had a number one hit and the band weren't together? And I said no, because we had all sorts of new paths that we were following. Chris and I were still working together. We were writing together. We just planned an album with Colin Blunstone, which was his 1 year album, which was a big hit in Europe. And we had a big hit single from it as well. And so it just felt like suddenly we had all this help from this unseen, hit. And I mean, we did turn down an awful lot of money to tour with the Reformed Zombies, but we've never done that. We've always tried to work from the point of view of excitement of what we're working on, and we still do. Still, to me, the most exciting thing is when I finish a new song and I play it to Colin, and if he likes it, and we start working out the vocal parts on it, just piano and voice, and then the next stage is taking it to the band and communicating, my ideas on where it should go, and then we rehearse it, and sometimes it alters, inevitably with the band. And that's the great thing about having a band around you and interaction between them. And it's still, the most exciting part of the whole business for me is creating new things, and it's great to be able to do it.
Those lyrics are so hip, though. Is he rich like me? I love that song.
Can I explain something about that line?
Okay.
People sometimes criticize that line, but what it was really, it's very ambivalent. It means, is he rich like me? It's like saying, if you remember, that was really the time of where there was a reaction against the Vietnam War.
Oh,
really, the whole love and peace thing was going on.
Right.
And we were never naive about the love and peace thing, but it was a very powerful feeling that was in the air. It really was. And Is He Rich Like Me was more like, is he rich in the fact that he's showing, the next lines, has he shown you what it means to live, what it means to live. In other words, it was a slight, the feeling of a spiritual richness rather than, I've got lots of money. It doesn't mean that at all, really. So it's very ambiguous, all of it. But then I love that about lyrics, because it's always what it means
exactly
to you,
Exactly. I didn't think you were going to say you were richer than the girl's father, That's asking for trouble.
That really is. Yeah.
But when I talked to Colin way back when, I asked him if you guys met Elvis. He says you guys went to the house, but he wasn't there, and you guys don't remember who answered the door at that time.
I think it was his father, Vernon.
Was it Vernon? Okay.
I think so, because when he answered the door, I mean, we played the previous night in Memphis,
right?
And a guy that was interviewing us afterwards said, "Do you want to meet Elvis?" And we said, "Oh God, we'd love to," because I mean, I still remember intimately I can still picture in my mind the day I heard Hound Dog, and it turned my whole world around. And that was Jim Rodford, that hit my older cousin, who played it to me. And he seemed so much like a being from another world. You know, in those days, the cultures of England and the States were so far apart that we thought, oh God, that, you know, I was a bit scared actually. But anyway, we went through the iron gates with the notes on them, which were a little bit rusty at that time. There was no security.
No security.
So
yeah.
we just opened the door and we walked up the drive and we went knock, knock, knock on the door. And
Is Elvis
Vernon,
there?
No. Yeah, we said that. Yeah. We said, hello, we're the Zombies from England. Is Elvis here? It's almost like saying, can he come out to play?
That's funny.
And Vernon said, oh, well, Elvis loves you guys. He'd be real sorry to have missed you, but he's away filming at the moment, you know. And we thought, oh, well, Vernon, well, I didn't realize it was Vernon at the time, but I thought he doesn't know who we are, but it's lovely Southern hospitality. It's really sweet. And he said, have a look around. And he invited us into the house.
Yeah.
And we felt a little bit, well, you know, should we really be here? And we just stayed for a little while. We didn't want to outstay our welcome. We went out. And then many years later, in 1990 or in the 90s, I was doing an interview with an Irish DJ.
Right.
And when I was telling him this story and sort of laughing about it, he said, just hang on a minute. He said, I'm an Elvis freak. He said, I can't believe you didn't know he had 3 of your songs on his jukebox.
That's right.
And I honestly, that flabbergasted me. And the thought that when I was 11, this world seemed so far away from me. Right. And then just 8 or 9 years later, this guy who seemed like a being from another universe actually had my music, you know, was listening to my music. And it's songs I'd written, and it was just a dream, really. So I love the fact we went there. And in a way, I'm quite pleased we didn't meet Elvis, because there was another hero of mine was Miles Davis. Yeah. And when I was producing an album with a colleague of mine for Tanita Tikaram, who actually the album sold in Europe, sold 4 million albums. There was this track, and we wanted to put a wonderful trumpet on the track. And the guy from her record company was at Warner Brothers. He was sitting in the studio, my little studio in Bedfordshire, where I lived at the time. And laughingly, we said, you know, there are only a couple of people who would be perfect for this track. And one, of course, is Miles Davis. Ha, ha, ha. And he said, Miles is in town at the moment. We've just signed him. He'll come down. And I said, no, absolutely not, because I completely blow it. I know I would. I'd be completely tongue-tied, and I would make no sense at all, you know. And I'd make a complete fool of myself, and then I couldn't live with myself, you know. It would destroy so much of my early teenage years. Now, when I was completely knocked out with that wonderful band with Coltrane and Cannibal Adderley.
Man. Yeah.
It was just wonderful. Yeah.
You guys are so funny when you meet your heroes. You know, you're
yeah.
It's hilarious. I talked to John Anderson from Yes, and he met I think it was George Harrison, and he nothing would come out. He said he was so nervous.
It's just that, and you think, and you go to head. Yeah, and you go to sleep and you think, oh my God, what did I say? Another quick story, without going miles off track, but a quick story about that is that I played, I did some stuff with Andrew Lloyd Webber, for Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Right.
And he asked me to play a Royal Command performance. You know, they have a one every year here. And, you know, the Queen was there and everything, and the royal family. And this guy, I didn't actually see it happen, but there's a story about this guy who was really so shy, and he was so scared of meeting the Queen, and he said to the guy who was organising it beforehand, "What happens if she speaks to me?" And he said, "Well, listen," she said, "first of all, she's not going to speak to you because she's meeting 60 or 70 people afterwards in a line." Right. She said, "There's no way that she's going to stop and talk to you." And he said, secondly, on the very small chance that she does, what all you have to remember is two things. You don't speak to her unless she speaks to you, and then you say Your Majesty the first time,
Right.
and then if she comes back with another phrase, you call her ma'am. That's it. That's all you have to remember. Your Majesty, and then on from there, ma'am. And he said, "Oh, okay." Anyway, she did stop and talk to him as she went down the line, and he was so scared that he sort of put his shoulder in the air and said, and she said something about, I could see you up there, and it seemed like I really enjoyed your playing. And he said, "Thank you, oh Queen."
Thank you, oh Queen. Mighty Queen.
Yeah. And so I can imagine going to bed that night and thinking, "Oh my God, how could I have said that?"
That
so
is
you're
so
worried.
funny.
That's what you're worried about, being tongue-tied.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
the Beatles must have been used to that. They must have been so used to that, I think.
Yeah. I don't think I'd get nervous talking to Paul or Ringo. I've talked to so many people now. Nothing phases me. The only guy that got me a little nervous is Ian Anderson from Tall, because I know he's a smart guy. He's one of my heroes, and you got to be on your guard with him. Because he's.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, he picks you up on stuff.
Yeah, but I've talked to him twice, and nice guy. Great interview. Very, very good interview.
Oh.
Is this true that you guys play John Lennon's Melotron, I guess, in the studio? Is that right?
As I said to you before, we walked in virtually after they walked out,
right,
having recorded Sergeant Pepper. And not only did we take advantage of some of the technical advances they'd made in Abbey Road Studios, because one of the things was, and this is true of us as well, we'd heard Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys album, right, I don't know, about 9 months before or something like that, or a year before. And we were blown away with it. And obviously the Beatles were blown away with it as well. And then John Lennon heard that Brian had recorded it on an 8-track. And he said to the boffins at Abbey Road, we got to have an 8-track. And they said, "There's not an 8-track in the country." And apparently John said something like, "Well, sort it out," and they just walked out. So they stayed up all night or whatever, and worked technically out some way of recording on more than 4 tracks. And of course, we were told this story, and we leapt on that as well and said, "Well, we want some of that as well." And they all went, "Oh no, we've got to sort of sort this out again." But apart from that, so those technical advances, they'd left a lot of stuff lying around in Abbey Road Studios. And one of the things we were told was John Lennon's Melotron. I'd never played it in my life. And when I first started to play it, I thought of it as a way of introducing orchestral elements onto some of the songs that I'd written, because I could never, the budget we had, we could never have afforded having an orchestra. So, but then, it was a real blessing, because we didn't ask John, we didn't ask anybody, and so thank you very much. But we used it, and of course it has its own signature sound, which is more quirky than a conventional orchestra, and it became something in its own right. And so I wasn't the first one to use a Melotron, but I was an early one. Yeah. And of course, it was all over Odyssey and Oracle, and it became a signature sound on that album. So that was a lovely piece of happenstance, that actually. It was really great.
Did John know that you guys played the Melotron on the album later on?
I never know, but we did hear, and I never ever spoke to John. I've spoken to Paul. Right. I've never ever spoken to John. And a few years later, Chris White said to me, and I can't remember who had been talking to him, but he said that John Lennon had said he would love to have produced us.
Oh man!
But so whether that was after Odyssey and Oracle, I have no idea. I don't know.
That would have been incredible, huh?
Yeah.
I just want a short tribute here. Jim Rodford. I did get to meet him backstage with you guys. Such a nice man. Wonderful. He died January 20th, 2018. He was 76.
2018, yeah.
Yeah. And man, I mean, not only Argent, the Kinks, the Zombies, he played on the early Zombies records, but he wasn't like part of the band. Is that right?
No, he didn't play on the early Zombies records, but he was a mentor and, if you like, an enabler for us all through our existence.
Really?
And so the thing was, after I'd originally heard Elvis down on that first day in 1956, when I was 11 years old, and he turned my head around to rock and roll. Absolutely. But he was already in a skiffle group at that time.
Right.
He was 4 years older than me. And very soon after that, I saw him play. And I went along. And he used to play a tea-chest bass with a piece of string on it. And really, right up until the time he died, he could get really marvelous tuning and notes out of just that. And he would sometimes do little illustrated evenings where he would do little lectures, and take one of those along. But anyway, he was the one that made me want to form a band. And when I eventually did, he loaned us his band's equipment, which by that time he was one of the first electric bands in the whole of the south of England. Oh. And so he loaned us all the Blue Tones equipment, Vox amps, or maybe it wasn't Vox at the time, it might have been Fender, I can't remember, but really good amps for, we had nothing like that. Right. And we had our first rehearsals, and he gave me a lift in his car because I was too young to drive, and et cetera, et cetera. He let us rehearse in the place where the Blue Tones used to rehearse. Right. And I actually wrote a song for them before the Zombies really existed, or they'd only just formed, and I'd forgotten this for years, and it was very derivative of the Beatles, this particular song, but they recorded it at Olympic Studios, and there is still somewhere a cassette of it. It's called The Lonely One. And then Jim showed Hugh Grundy, our first drummer, the very first kick drum and snare drum feel and groove that he'd ever played, and Jim, who could play a bit of drums, sat down and showed him that. And to be fair, Hugh picked it up within a minute. It was great actually, because he was a military drummer. I picked up the guy in the school Army Cadet Corps who seemed to have the best groove on military drums, going all that sort of thing. And but anyway, that was how the band started. So Jim, all the way along, he got us our first gigs in St Albans because the person that managed his band, he persuaded him to give us a chance supporting someone at the St Albans Town Hall, which was the first big hall we'd ever played. He was really, it was so sad when he died because of an accident. Actually, he fell down the stairs, and that caused a heart attack. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and he went. Yeah.
So fast, huh?
So fast.
I've fallen many a times. As a matter of fact, I got metal up and down my arms from various surgeries from falling down. And it scares me to fall, especially as you get older,
Oh, really?
It's honestly. No joke. It really isn't.
No. Were you playing any sports or anything at the time, or was it just accidental?
Playing with the grandkids.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. But wow. I've had 3 surgeries up and down, and lots of metal and screws and bolts, and it doesn't work too good anymore.
No. Oh dear.
So be careful.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, don't trip over your keyboard.
Well, that's happened before now.
Rod, here's a question I ask everybody. I get some very interesting answers, and it's ironic because it's a Field of Dreams wish. And they actually played a baseball game at Field of Dreams yesterday.
I love that film. Yeah.
Isn't that cool? If you had a Field of Dreams wish to perform or collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
To collaborate? What, with a musician?
With a musician, to perform with, write music with, play keyboards for.
I'm going to be really off-piste here and say no, because there could be several answers to this.
Of course, yeah.
But I'm going to say Duke Ellington.
Really? Oh, wow, that surprised me.
Well, that's one. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, my dad my dad was a semi-pro dance band leader from the age of 17 to the age of 83. That's when he stopped playing.
Cool.
And he completely self-taught, you know. And when I was growing up, there wasn't much pop music I liked. I mean, I used to, you know, sing along to a few things that were Pericomo and things like that was on at the time. But it was only when I heard Elvis that that was the birth to me of rock and roll. It was just great. But because of my dad's roots as well, there were two roots in my family. One was a classical music route, because my mother loved classical music, but it tended to be quite light classical music, and that was the only thing I heard in my first few years, you know. And my dad, though, occasionally, because he was born in 1912, you know, he was obviously conversant with people like Duke Ellington and everything. And I remember the first time I heard Duke Ellington, or Duke Ellington material, it absolutely blew me away. The very first thing I heard of his that I knew was Duke Ellington was a thing he did in the 20s called Black and Tan Fantasy. And I just loved, because he was self-taught as well. He actually had a few piano lessons with a piano teacher called Mrs. Clinkscales, which is fantastic for a pianist, you know. But he was basically self-taught. And then all these giants of early jazz were just his mates. I mean, that's how so many rock and roll bands started, with just some mates getting together. And as Dave Grohl said, just go into a garage and suck, you know, and then gradually get better, you know, and learn your trade that way. And that's where all the energy and everything comes from. And that's what Duke Ellington did. So he was a prototype in my mind for something which became very beautiful and very, very technically accomplished, but also, you know, marvelous spirit of music in it. And that was the very early thing that I heard, Black and Tan Fantasy. Absolutely loved it. But I mean, there could be many people. Oh my God! You know, there are obvious people like I'd love to have had a chat with Bill Evans. I met Chick Corea when Argent played with Chick Corea, Return to Forever. And he was lovely guy. And he told me some great stories about when he first played with Miles Davis. And Miles would not only not tell him what songs they were playing, he wouldn't tell him even what keys they were in. So he was scared stiff. He said it was only because John McLaughlin was standing next to him, who was really, really sweet to him and was calling out everything and calling out all the chords to him, you know, and everything. So the Bill Evans thing, because I love the feeling that he explored, you know, with jazz, with harmony. I would love to have been together with Ray Charles and just and picked his brains on a couple of things, because
he was amazing.
Oh man, I remember the very first Ray Charles album I heard. I was about 16, and it was live at Newport. It was and it was recorded with one mic. There was one mic that was just hanging down over the whole thing, and the sound is brilliant. You can still play it now. The sound is fantastic, and it's all, you know, it's all their mix. It was just so organic, and his voice at that time and the soul in his playing was just really, really wonderful. I'd love to have played a little bit or conversed with Stevie Wonder. I remember just being told about a year ago that a good friend of mine is a bass player. He was a guy called Mo Foster. He was one of the main session players in around the time of the 70s and 80s and everything. And he said that in somewhere in the, I don't know, in the 2000s, I think it was, but might have been before that. But no, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. It was in the 70s or 80s. He said they were him and a pickup band were playing somewhere, and Stevie Wonder walked in. There were very few people it might have been a hotel or something. He said, and Stevie Wonder came up to them, because they're really good musicians, and said, oh man, can I sit in with you guys and play something? And they went, oh God, that would be absolutely amazing. And so Stevie got up and with his harmonica, and they'd just been playing "She's Not There," and
Really?
and they said to Stevie, "What would you like to play?" He said, "Play She's Not There again." And so he did this complete workout on "She's Not There."
Mhm.
I would love to have heard that, and I would love to just feel that I could do something, because the spirit of that man really. I was even though in '72, I was, incredibly excited because of the things that were happening with Hold Your Head Up and everything
Yep.
with Argent. There wasn't a lot around at that particular moment
Mhm.
that really knocked me out. And I remember going out to buy a couple of albums, and I bought 2 albums.
Mhm.
I bought One Weekend. I bought the John McLaughlin album.
Mhm.
Oh God, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, the first one. It's gone out of my head. The one before Birds of Fire.
Before Birds of Fire. Yeah.
The one before that. But anyway,
Right.
I bought that. I didn't play it that weekend at all. And I also was looking around and I thought, oh, Stevie Wonder. Yeah, I used to like, I remember liking My Sharia more,
Mhm.
and some of those early things. So I bought that album, didn't think anything else about it, didn't even play them that weekend. And a week later, I thought, oh, I'm going to put these 2 albums on. And they both completely blew me away. And the spirit of Stevie around that time, and I know maybe including Music of My Mind as well, but that was Talking Book. The album was
Right.
Talking Book that I bought, and I still love that album to death. And that period, and then the period up to Songs in the Key of Life.
Mhm.
I just thought he was magisterial, really, just a wonderful, wonderful musician in every way. And so that would be a bit of a dream. But any of those people,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's a 2.5 hour
It's a
lecture.
good answer. Great answer. Yeah, Stevie was on fire back in the early 70s, 72, 73. And then he came out with Superstition. And
Yeah.
he was on top of the charts all the time.
Oh, and the McLaughlin album was In a Mounting Flame.
Okay.
And the thing I loved about both of them, I thought they had both in common. It wasn't the technical wizardry on the McLaughlin album.
Right.
It was the fact that all the melodies had just wonderful upward sort of rises and an ecstatic sort of feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of Stevie's music around that time had that sort of joy. Exactly. And that's what I really loved about the early Beatles things. Yep. They always seem to communicate that energy and joy.
They do.
Of just playing. Yeah. And I love that in rock and roll. Really do.
I agree. There's enough darkness in the world. We don't need to hear any, negative stuff. Well, the Zombies are the same way. I mean, it's all positive music. That's why you guys have been so successful these years. I got to tell you, man, you and Colin, what a relationship you've had all these years. It's amazing to stay together for that many years without screaming and yelling at each other.
Well, I know. Well, we haven't. In a way, we've continued to work together, but obviously, we from 1961. And I met Colin. It was extraordinary, really. I met him on the very first rehearsal that we had. Mm-hmm. That's when I met him. But we became friends immediately. Yeah. And we stayed friends all our lives. And then, so first of all, between 61 and 67, which is when we broke up, we played together and we used to room together. I mean, we all shared rooms in those days with the Zombies.
Of course.
And then after that, Chris White and I got this production deal with Clive Davis, and we produced Colin's first solo album, and then he had a really nice solo career over here, and I produced 2 or 3 of his albums around that time, including One Year, the first one.
Right.
And then after that, we went our separate ways because Argent became more and more intensely working, and then but Colin would often phone me up. And I would go and on several of his albums, I did all the harmonies. So I would do all the backing harmonies on. There was a Bill Schnee record. I can't remember what it production, and I did all the harmonies on on, you know, layered them basically
Sure.
on that album. And I would often do that on Colin and work out harmonies and things with him. And then there was a period where I just produced for a few years, and so we weren't playing together. And it was only around the year 2000 or 1999, late 99, that Colin happened to come along to a concert that I was doing for a jazz musician friend of mine called John Dankworth and Cleo Lane.
Right. I know them.
Yeah. And he asked me to put an all music thing together. So I did. And I reformed Argent just for a 40-minute set, as well as playing a bit of classical music and a bit of jazz as well. And Colin was in the audience, and we hadn't seen much of each other in the previous 10, 12 years.
Really?
But we'd always remained friends.
Yeah.
And he came along to see the concert because the concert was to raise money for a new theatre.
Right.
And I said to him on the spur of the moment, Colin, you're in the audience. Do you want to sing? Come up and sing "She's Not There." So he came up and we did "She's Not There" with Argent playing. You know, so Colin singing "She's Not There," and then after that, as a second one, the only two things we could remember of the Zombies at that point, and "Time of the Season," and he played and he sang "Time of the Season" as well. And then, and it felt as if we'd been playing together 2 weeks before, and then a few weeks later, Colin phoned me up and said, "Look, I'm doing a little bit of solo work now. Why don't you come and do it with me for a few gigs?" I said, "Oh, Colin, I don't know." Yeah, you know, because I thought my previous experience on the road had been with Argent, and it was in the days in the 70s when it was massive production to put anything on stage.
Right.
You had to take your own PA systems. I took over the Hammond organ, you know, a Melotron. They were always going wrong. I thought, I'm even then I thought I'm getting too old to put up with this, you know. but anyway, but Jim Rodford, who played obviously with Argent with me, said, "Rod, it's not like that anymore," because he was still doing gigs with the Kinks at that time.
Yeah.
And he said, "It's so different now. Honestly, it's so much easier." I said, "Yeah, is it really?" And in the end, I said to Colin, "Okay, look, I'll do 6 gigs with you." And honestly, I had such a ball that after that, in a very slow way, we gradually started to gather momentum. And that's turned out now to be 21 years on the road.
Oh, man. It's too much fun.
Yeah.
You know what's cool about Hold Your Head Up? Russ Ballard and Colin have a similar pitch for that song. So,
well,
you know,
yeah. Well, they both got lovely high voices if necessary. And particularly when Russ was a little bit younger, his high range was just gorgeous. And both he could both sing out very powerfully at high range, or he could sing sort of very sweetly at high range as well. And honestly, on those first 2 Argent albums, in a way, they were my favorite albums, but we got a fairly small sound at the time because of the studio we were working in. This is why we changed to Abbey Road for the Altogether Now, which had Hold Your Head Up on it. Right. But there was a box set released by Sony a few years ago, and they had it remastered. And when they remastered it with modern techniques of being able to do different band compression, multi-band compression, all those things. But anyway, without going into the technicalities of it, it enabled the actual sound to start being powerful enough to reveal the music in a way that stood up to anything else that you played. So it brought it into the sort of sound that we had after we moved to Abbey Road, basically. And unfortunately, that reissue stopped, so you can't get it anymore. But I love that version with that remastering. And honestly, when I played those first 2 albums again, in a way, they're my favorite. They almost seem like a complete progression from the Zombies and a natural one, you know. And I absolutely love listening to those. So you know, so it's all been good. It's been a lovely way to have been able to earn my living all these years.
Sure. Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I gotta mention when you were with Argent, you had the best hair, man.
At one point, I could sit on it. At one point, I could sit.
I had real long hair too, but
Did you really?
Oh yeah, but you beat me, man. That's
It was so thick and curly as well. And I always remember I completely when I was producing in my little studio in Bedfordshire, my colleague Peter Van Hook and myself, Peter Van Hook for years was a Van Morrison's drummer.
right.
And then he was with Mike and the Mechanics and things like that. But we did a lot of record production together, and we produced a record for a South American artist called Soraya, which actually was a big hit in Europe, but also in South America. I think it was a big hit as well. But why am I telling you this? This is age. Bloody hell. What were we talking about? I completely forgotten.
How long your hair was, I think.
Oh yeah,
that's where it started.
Okay. Okay, got it. Well, she'd written a song with Carole King.
Right.
And Carole King was over here, and she came to my studio.
Really?
And she didn't know who I was. No reason why she should. I mean, she didn't put two and two together at all, you know. And then, you know, towards the end of the session, actually, she did find out because she saw on one of the walls, probably timed the season BMI award for, you know, at that time it was probably about 4 million or something like that.
Right.
4 million plays. And she said, "Oh God, did you write that?" You know, so she did eventually know. But before that, I remembered, and this was the most unflattering thing I could have possibly said to her. I remembered a picture of me that was taken from Melody Maker in the UK, and I loved the picture, but it was just of my face on this cascade of you know, people used to think I permed my hair, but I didn't. It's just naturally curly. It just, you know, it was very thick and very curly. And it was just something about the picture that I thought I looked just like Carole King. And I said to her, I said to her, "Oh, I had a picture taken of me in the Melody Maker in 72 or 3, and it looks just like you."
That's
and
funny.
She hardly spoke to me after that.
That's hilarious.
Wow.
My hair looked like Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath. You know, it was real. I want to mention to everybody, you know, if you want to get big arms, you don't have to be a drummer. You can be a keyboard player, because Rod's got these huge arms, man, that I just noticed. Do you work out, or is that all from the keyboards?
No, it's not from the keyboard. I mean, the thing is, I've always, you know, for many years, I don't do much, but I always do. Every couple of days, I try and do 20 minutes of pretty light weights, actually.
Really?
I mean, they're pretty light, but I do a lot of them. But it's just to try and exercise. It's just trying to keep some sort of muscle tone as I get older, really.
It's noticeable, man. Usually when you get older, they kind of sag and, you know, get fat.
They do, you know, but I think if you can just keep a bit of muscle tone there. I play a lot of tennis as well.
Okay, good.
But and then on alternate days, I try and do something aerobic, and that might just be a fast walk for half an hour. I mean, just that. I have to give myself something that I know I've got a chance of keeping up.
Right.
Because if I gave myself any workouts or anything that were too heavy, I just wouldn't do it.
Okay.
So when we're on the road, I try and do an alternate walk.
Right.
Or even I go into a gentle jog sometimes for you know, like 25 minutes, something like that. And then on the other alternate days, I'll go to the gym if there's one there for 20 minutes, and just to do something to not let everything go, you know.
That's why you look great. You look wonderful, man. I'm telling you.
Thank you.
I'm going to set something up next time you're in Florida. I just interviewed Tony Kaye, keyboardist, the original keyboardist from Yes.
Yeah,
he plays tennis and he's good at it. So,
cool.
And he lives about 10, 15 minutes from me here in Florida. I'm going to set you guys up.
and have a game. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'll keep score. I'll be the judge.
No, you're not allowed to watch it unless I win.
He
No,
played
I
in
didn't.
tournaments and stuff like that. But
Really?
yeah.
Oh, well, he'd be much better than me. I mean,
Well,
the thing is,
go ahead.
I didn't play for about 15 or 16 years because
Right.
I had actually, when I was on tour with Ringo, I had a little something happen in my eye where I lost a lot of the sight in my left eye.
Really?
And it's just, I think there's a weakness there. Anyway, I won't go into all that, but it meant that I stopped playing for a long time. And it's only in the past 2 years that I live almost next door to a tennis club, and there's an absolutely brilliant coach here.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to risk having a few lessons again.
Oh, yeah.
And I've started to really get into it again.
Awesome. Good.
And I had a lesson earlier today, strangely enough.
All right. Have you been to Wimbledon? You've been to Wimbledon, right? Probably.
I have been to Wimbledon.
Yeah. Tony has too. Yeah.
No, I bet he's really good, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'll set you guys up. I like to see that. We'll put you on camera too.
Oh my God, no!
It'll be a live stream worldwide. Rod, wrapping up. What's next now? You got there is an album coming out. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's next is this. That tomorrow, I've got a great little studio here. It's only small.
Okay.
But when we moved, I had to have a building that I could convert into a studio. And actually, the guy Peter Van Hook, my production colleague from years ago that I just told you about,
right?
He does a lot of work with Paul Carrack, marvelous singer.
Okay.
Paul's got a lovely studio. And when I was having my studio done, Pete said to me, "You know the guy you should get to design it acoustically?" And it's only small, honestly, it's really small. But he said, it's a guy called John Flynn. And I said, "Oh, okay." And I sort of got his number and everything. And then he said, he designed all the control rooms and the studios at Abbey Road. And I said, "What?" I said, "Well, I'm never going to be able to afford him. That's crazy." He said, "No, he's your age, he's my age." And he said, if he wants to do it, if he feels it's something he wants to do, he's not unreasonable at all. And in fact, John did it. And so that there's another link with Abbey Road.
That's
absolutely
great.
Marvelous. And so anyway, cut a long story short, he did it and it was fantastic. I've got this big, because this is a barn conversion.
Right.
I'm not in the particular room at the moment, but it's a huge 18th century threshing barn, which is our main sort of living area, although I'm in the smaller living area at the moment. And it's got because it's got such a high ceiling, it's got the most beautiful acoustics. So when we record the band, we record in the little studio, because there's a great live room, because John Flynn's just got a great sounding room there, absolutely wonderful. And a good control room, but small. But we've got lines coming out, cable lines coming out into what is, it sounds very grand, but this is just what the estate agent called it. It's called the Great Hall. It's the big barn, basically. The barn. And because the roof goes right up to the top, it sounds great. And we are actually putting tomorrow. We're setting up the mics and everything for the session, and then on Sunday we're putting the string quartet I told you about. It's a quintet actually that ELO uses, tours with all the time. They're putting some string arrangements that I've written for three tracks that we've already recorded for our new album. We've actually already recorded. We've recorded and finished 3 tracks, and then lockdown really threw everything to madness. And now we've finished, except for the strings. Well, I've written the string parts. We've finished another 3 tracks. Another 4 tracks.
Right.
So that's 7 tracks. And there's an 8th track, which is a song we recorded on an earlier album called I Want to Fly, but I wanted to look back to Colin's 1 Year album. And there's this wonderful string arranger, and I got him to do. He's a classical. He writes classical music as well, and he's done an arrangement for the song which he loved, called I Want to Fly. So basically, we're there now.
Okay.
With eight tracks.
8 tracks.
And then they're all my songs, but Colin's got this lovely little song that he's written, which is very intimate, just basically acoustic guitar and voice, although we may expand it. So that's 9. And then I want to write, because there are several songs with real grooves on this album, and then some intimate songs as well. And I want to write a 4th track that's got a real groove to it to finish off the album. And then I'm really hoping that even with everything that's going on, we'll be able to finish the album this year, so that next year when we tour, we can release a new album at the same time. Excellent. So that's really what's coming up. Colin is actually in November going to the west coast of America, and he's doing a relaunch of his 1971 album that Chris White and I produced, called 1 Year, with a string quartet and everything. And it's not just a string quartet, it's a band as well. And at one point, they asked me to go over and sort of work with him on that, but there's absolutely no point, because the string players, they're classical players, but they've done versions already with different people, with somebody else singing of his 1 Year tracks, which are really, really lovely. They've got the spirit of it. Absolutely, exactly, 100%.
Fantastic.
So he'll be doing that in November. So it's strange enough, it is going to be
very
pretty
busy.
full on. Oh, and we've got 2 weeks before the Abbey Road concert. So we've only had 2 full rehearsals, and we've got 2 more the week before the show.
Okay.
And leading up to that, we've got to do this string stuff. We've got to finish off a couple of tracks that we've recorded with the band, just get all those things finished off, so that we can finish this year having done everything that we want to do. You guys are always busy anyway. I can't remember a time where you guys just kind of laid low, No. You're always out there. Well, yeah, and you have to pace yourself to a certain extent, but as I said right at the beginning, it's really rejuvenating to be able to still feel that you're accomplishing things, in the sense of creatively accomplishing them, and end up with tracks that you really like still. And I admire you guys as musicians. I wish I could do, I play a little guitar, but I'm a very frustrated musician. But the way you guys travel from place to place, oh my gosh. Well, that's hard, actually, Jay. That's really hard. And that side of things I've never found easy. Even when I was 18, I found the constant touring hard, the actual very traveling difficult. Because many days, I mean, what happens very often is that you might have a 6-hour journey. We travel in a really nicely set out, I don't know what you call them, it's like an SUV thing, it's big, like big, and they've got lovely seats in them, and they've got all sorts of Wi-Fi and all that, so it's as nice as we can have it. But it could be a 6-hour drive, and then you get there for sound check in the afternoon, and then you might have sorting out problems with the sound, and then a bit of rehearsal, and then you have to have maybe interviews or a meet and greet or something, and then you've got your 2-hour or 1.5 hour set, or whatever it is, 1 3/4 hour set, and then by the time you've got changed again and go back to the hotel, it could be midnight, and I then have to come down for at least half an hour or an hour. And then you might have to be up at 7:30 the next morning. Do you know what I mean? So I've always found that really hard. And when we get home from a tour, even though it's worth it just for the playing, I mean, that's the bit I really enjoy, that we both really enjoy. And as I'm always saying, the bit at the end of the evening, as I said to you, it tends to be more of a rush for the hotel than it was in the old days, when sometimes that was the evening just starting. Well, the old days, you guys were always worldwide touring. Elvis never toured worldwide. He only did the United States. that was a lot to do with the Colonel, wasn't it?
The Colonel.
And his passport situation.
Exactly.
And visa situation and everything. Yeah.
Exactly. So he didn't experience that jet lag, from worldwide touring.
That jet lag has always hit me hard as well.
Oh, God.
And one of the reasons I didn't want to go over to the West Coast with Colin is because I like starting on the East Coast. So it's only a 5-hour time difference. And then gradually working our way to the West, so that by the time it's an 8-hour time difference,
right,
you're not just suddenly hit with that 8-hour time difference, because it kills me, honestly. It always has done.
It'd be different. Like when you come into Florida, you do a show and you can stay a couple of days to relax, and then but it doesn't work out that way. You gotta very often all you see is the inside of the hotel. Exactly.
You visit these wonderful places,
right,
and then your mind is basically on the show and the music.
Exactly.
So it's never in when I go somewhere lovely with my wife, it's wonderful because we go out and see everything.
Sure.
Like we went to Bruges. Which is the most wonderful place for her 70th birthday, and we had a fantastic time. We went out every moment. We was looking at things and seeing things, and then we went actually with also my love of classical music I've always had with Bach particularly. We went to the Bach Festival in Leipzig a couple of years ago, and that was fantastic as well. So we did everything we could in the day then. But when you're on tour, she's only been away a couple of times with me, and it drives her mad. Because I don't want to do anything except just stay in the hotel and focus, really.
It's tough, man.
Your mind's in a completely different place, really.
You pay your dues. You definitely pay your dues.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I want to mention September 18th, live from Abbey Road Studios, 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. GMT time. Get your tickets at www.thezombiesmusic.com/live, www.veeps.com. Man, we hope to see you in Florida, man, after, this next tour, we really hope you come back.
Oh, me too, honestly.
Rod, I want to thank you so much, man, for being on the show today. You're one of my heroes. Like I said, only 2 guys have touched me and got me out of the seat where I'm screaming and yelling. That's you and Jeff Beck.
Oh, bless you.
You're great. You're a legend, and always love your music, man. Better than the Beatles.
Oh, man, thank you so much.
Take care, Rod.
Take care.
All right, cheers, my mate. Best. I'm gonna set up that tennis match. So
okay.
When you come to Florida,
I better get a few lessons in then.
Okay, go ahead, go for it.
Okay.
Bye-bye now.
Bye bye.
Cheers.